Welcome to Recovery, the Whole Enchilada, a podcast dedicated to exploring many layers of healing and growth within our recovery community. I'm Peg McDermott, along with my co-host,
Hello,
Heather.
Hello, sweetie.
And together we share conversations that honor the complete recovery experience. And today's conversation is going to be about the meaning of spirituality in recovery. I think we were talking briefly before we signed on for the podcast today. And, life just is so, and the universe and our higher power, it's a perfect process, I guess, because of all the things that are presented to us and what the meaning is, right?
Yes. And I'll tell you what, I think what's really amazing, and I'll just give an example. I was raised in a, religion, Protestant, and I went to church and sat by my dad and went to Sunday school and never really connected with it. And, as time went on, I think I had a sort of fear-based relationship with God. God sat up in the sky, and was very judgmental, and I was bad or wrong, and a lot of times when I would get into, trouble, I would be like, oh, please God, help me, get me out of this and I'll stop drinking. You know that one?
Yeah, I do.
When I'm pulled over by the police and
Yeah, foxhole prayers.
And so I think I think what's so brilliant about this idea of, that's offered in this 12-step model. I'm just going to put that out there, but there's the idea that you can have a relationship with a power greater than you of your own understanding.
Mhm.
And I really feel like that is a wonderful gift that every single human being, honestly, I don't want to use the word should, but I don't know how to say it, should be allowed to have that. This is one of those shoulds I think people should be allowed to have. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I had a conversation recently with somebody who was very Christian, very born again, very evangelical and beautiful. I can have conversations with a Buddhist. I can have conversations with any religion because in my frame of mind, they have a name for what they're saying, and that's fine. My name is mine. Mine is my name, but we can have a dialogue of that's neutral, and we really are looking at the same things in that we are believing in something greater than us, has a personal interest in what we do, and that every detail is in this higher power's plans for us. There is a divine timing, there's divine planning, and it's personal to me that, and so it can be, you can say that in many different ways, but I really love the fact that today I can listen to anybody say anything and be totally open and not close to what people are saying and thinking that I'm right, you're wrong. And I think that's what spirituality really means. It's like being able to be neutral and hold that space, for all people.
Agreed. And I too had a different religious background. I was brought up Catholic, but my view of God was much like yours. It was sort of this removed, sort of old man sitting on a cloud somewhere, sort of wagging his finger at me when I was being bad, and misbehaving, or that I was going to go to hell or wherever. And I guess it was purgatory, I can't remember what purgatory is, but it wasn't a good thing. And so,
Right.
in the Catholic faith, I went to, Catholic high school and Catholic grade school, and until my high school closed, and I had to go to the big bad public school, and that's where all the hell broke loose. But, oh God. So I didn't really, we'd go to church every Sunday and I would listen to the mass, but it didn't, I didn't really want to be there. I wanted to be out playing and doing what my age group wanted to do at the time. And over time, I just didn't trust in this God. I didn't believe it to be one that had my best interests at heart. I really don't. I felt it was one that sort of sat back and waited for me to screw up and then judged me. And that is, I'm not casting any shade on Catholicism or any religion. That's just what my experience was. And I thought that I was on my own 100%. And that fueled my drinking. And I didn't believe in this being that loved me unconditionally and would walk me through all of life. I didn't believe it. I believed that I was alone and I was on my own and I was going to do it by myself. And that did not work out well for me because I don't believe we're meant to be these, islands unto ourselves. We're supposed to be together as herd animals to learn from one another and support one another. And God showed me, my higher power showed me who it was through people. And so when I was in, with other recovering alcoholics, and I would listen to them and listen to their stories and listen to how they walk through life and how they dealt with pretty difficult life situations and not drink. That is when my perception of a higher power evolved into this really loving, all-knowing friend, and one that had my best interests at heart. That no matter what the plan was, it was for my highest good. And I didn't always believe that, but I learned it through people. I learned it through my peers and the people in the meetings I attended. I learned it through you and other people within our circle, because that's what I needed, real life examples of this sort of abstract, I can't touch it. I don't know what it means. And now I do. I can't touch it, but I can feel it. And it alleviated a lot of loneliness for me because I knew that, what life brought could be hard. Life doesn't stop being life because I stopped drinking. I just learned new tools how to cope constructively and not destructively. And for me, the main sort of force that runs through my life is this spiritual program and a spiritual life. It's allowed more acceptance of myself and more acceptance of others, even of other religions. I'm like you, I agree. Who has a corner on the religious market? It's like it takes so many shapes and it has so many ways to express itself. And I think that's a beautiful thing, whether it's Catholicism or Protestant or whatever. I think that's a beautiful thing. As long as I'm finding meaning in, because religion and spirituality sometimes can be the same thing depending on what I bring to it, So I don't practice actively, but I am practicing my spirituality every day.
Going back to I heard this once said that my higher power had the face of an alcoholic.
Hmm.
And meaning growing up as a child, all we know in those early years is our parents.
Hmm.
And I related to this, Peg, because I believe for quite a good portion of my youth and probably into my 20s, my father was my higher power. And everything I did and everything, every celebration, he was the first person I called. And so I had a great, deep love for my father. But unfortunately, when we love and put somebody on a pedestal, we know how that goes, right?
Yeah.
We find out people are fallible. We find out people aren't perfect. And time we get disappointed, right?
Yeah.
And so, so much of the journey happened. Well, actually, one of the reasons I even got into recovery was, is, and I'll never forget it. I got a letter from my father, and he said, he was on his way driving out to California to see my brother, and he sent me the letter first, but I don't think he thought I was going to get it early, and I got it early. In that letter, he told me he'd been diagnosed with a very lethal cancer, and he only had a couple of years to live. And I remember getting that letter, and I remember looking at that and thinking, I don't want to live. I he can't die alone, and I want to die with him. I mean, those were the thoughts I had, and then I was like, those thoughts are not normal, healthy thoughts, Heather. And actually, it sent me to a therapist. That's when I really got back into therapy, and within 2 years, I was sober. Because during those, we went slowly with it because I thought I had a lot of other things going on, but the truth was, once I put the plug in the jug, everything else could happen. I
Right.
I think we have to really address what's gonna kill us the quickest, and that was. So, in that, I began to try to find out, well, who is the God of my understanding? Is it my dad's God? It's not my dad anymore, so who is it? And so I went on a 5-year journey as a seeker to find what spirituality meant to me.
Mm.
I mean, and I went to the Hare Krishnas. I went to the Buddhist temple. I went to, born again evangelical church. I I went to a lot of different spaces and places. And then I ended up, you know, just kind of sitting with myself and really, what, well, why does it have to be in the shape of a church? Like, but I did want community, right?
Mm.
And so I think the meetings became a sort of type of church for me in a way. That I heard the higher power speak through people. So I began to realize that's what meetings were. That was a medicine for me in meetings. It was like that little thing that said, "Is it odd or is it God?" It just felt like that. I started to see synchronicity and coincidences, and I'm thinking about somebody and they call me. I started to see all these things that were just seemed a little bit, there's something more to this, you know?
Mm.
And so I ended up landing in I did find a church. I went around and interviewed churches. I went to, like Episcopal churches. I went to all kinds of churches to try to find one because I felt so good in the community that I had got sober in. I wanted to continue out and find another community for spirituality. And I did land in a community, and I stayed there for about 10 years. And I actually took their courses and got involved in their community and even created art for the church. And so I'm really grateful for that experience because I got around other like-minded people and had other great conversations. But ultimately, in the end, it was really about me and my personal relationship. And I'll just keep it simple right now, with love. It was really a relationship with love, unconditional love, self-care love, just the whole idea that of an unbelievable love. And I want to just share something funny because recently I was talking to someone, and I was just mentioning, one of the things I got into too, of course, was studying everything I could on life after death experiences. And I read a lot of books and listened to a lot of watched a lot of videos, and, people that had passed away, for anywhere from, 8 to 26 minutes, I think was the longest. And they came back to life. And so I was talking to somebody about this, and it's funny because I guess our phones are listening, because the next thing I know, I'm getting all these reels of people, life after death. But it's just funny. It's like, wow. But I have to tell you, this one really shook me, and I haven't been looking at this in a long time, but so it's just recent that this man who was like a neuroscientist had died, and he was dead for like 8 minutes. And they talk about this life review and the love that they feel and the light that they see and all this stuff. But one thing he said that nobody's ever said, he said that he heard the constant sound of the yoga. And if you know anything about this sound, and maybe you guys don't know this, is the sound that the earth makes at the quietest point of earth. There is a sound and that's why when we it actually is like a tuning fork for balance in our bodies. So anyway, I just want to share that with you because when I see these life after death ones and they're so universal and a lot of what goes on, I get excited because not one person says it was awful. Everybody says it was so much love. It was so amazing. They didn't want to come back. So that just keeps me going, keeps me going.
Yeah. Yes. I think, when my mother died, I was only, I had stopped drinking for like a year. And one thing I'll say about our community is they do really surround you and support you in those difficult times. And she had died suddenly. And I remember how time just slowed down. I remember when I heard, it was like time just stopped. And I do remember this connection that I felt at that moment beyond the grief and the shock of it. I knew that my mom was going to be okay because she hadn't been okay here. And the same what was true for my brother Tim. When he passed away suddenly, it was like you the world just changes. And it's like the world before the death and after the death. And what you just shared, it is something I do believe. And I had to read up on it a lot, especially around when my mom passed away, because I wanted to know that she was okay. I wanted proof. I mean, I knew in my heart. And at the same time, I'm like, I need to know. And so I read, there was a big book back then in the 90s. Oh, I can't remember the name of it. You'd know it if I mentioned it.
I can see it for some reason. I just,
And I read it, and it really brought me a lot of comfort. And I also believe, and I think you told me this when I went out to take care of Tim's estate and things around, his life, just my being his sole family member. You said to me, make sure that you pay attention to the angels that are going to show up, the people that are going to show up, the circumstances that will show. And I did. And they did. And I just paid attention to the support and just the resources that came together and the comfort. It was wonderful. And so over time, I've realized that they are both in a really good place and that they're still with me. They're just in another realm, and that my higher power is good, and that their path in life was their path in life. Whatever their soul had decided ahead of time, that was it. And there was no changing that. And so the acceptance of it is a big piece of the spirituality for me, is really accepting that this is a passing onto another place for me. And that comfort and love is there, even if if we may not feel it to the extent perhaps others feel it in this realm. It's like, I heard it's amazing. I've heard the same stories you have. And that brought me comfort, and that got me closer to my higher power. And it got me closer to spirituality and finding the meaning in it, and finding the meaning in these, I don't want to say losses, these changes in my life. And it helped me to start looking more inward versus sort of, and this was a process. It wasn't an event. It was just looking inward more versus looking for external validation and affirmation. And because I had done all that, and I never felt full. I never felt satisfied when I was looking to those things to fill me up. And, you know, is it- life has a way of sort of rubbing off the rough edges and through these experiences. And I don't believe they're accidents. And I believe that they're for my growth and for my betterment so that I can be of more service and I can learn to love, like you said, really love without any expectation, which was what I used to do, especially with alcohol in my system. It was always about me. And that isn't the case as much anymore. And that's my spirituality, my spiritual life has helped sort of mold me into someone that I love and, and has provided a life that has some peace to it because I've accepted that there are going to be times that are wonderful and not so wonderful. It's all life and it's all meant for my good.
I early on, someone, I think it was my sponsor, said to me, "You're not afraid of dying, Heather. You're afraid of living." And that really kind of has been something I've pondered about for a long time. And I thought I was afraid of dying, but and I was back then because I was definitely living a reckless, dangerous lifestyle. But the truth is, living is, I think, is not about. It's also not about being afraid of dying. I mean, I think that's. But to live with that idea that everyone has a higher power, everyone has a soul mission here and a purpose. And I am not God for anyone. And I know I've said that before in other podcasts, but recently I was very disappointed by the behavior of a person, and it was it really kind of hurt a lot, devastated me in some ways, my human me. And of course I had a reaction, my human me, and I had to get on my knees and ask God to help me, ask my higher power to help me have the lens of love and not judgment, and and wanting to walk away, and just help me to see this person as a beloved child of God, and that they must have been so hurt in themselves to do this. And this, I think, is what spirituality helps me today with, is to really step back and just see that everyone they're working on their own soul's journey, and maybe I don't like it and it doesn't look good to me, and I think it's very destructive. Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Higher power is with them too, and that is a relief, you know
It is.
but I will say, one of the things I do have to do is I have to protect myself, and I have to be safe in my life, and I have to be careful, when people, go back out, and I just gotta, I can love from
Mm-hmm.
afar and
Mm-hmm.
be the hand to reach for them when they really are willing, I mean, and that's what we say. We don't, what do we say? We don't carry the alcoholic. Um, we
Carry the message.
carry the message. Thank you. And this message, steps 1, 2, and 3 are just, I can't, higher power can't, I'm going to let higher power, has been a mantra for many years. And, and so, we are human, and we do, there's a lot of troubling things going on. But when I plug in and connect, and try to do that throughout the day. So I try to do it in the morning, but I lose it, within an hour. So I have to
Mhm.
repeatedly go through the day and remind myself, do that inventory. Where are you? What are you doing? Are you here? And how are you self-care, self-love? Are you loving? Just like all day long. Where are your thoughts? What are you doing? And I feel like that's part of spirituality, to really recognize that we're these spirit beings having this earth experience, and the challenge is to not let what we might not see things clearly, and that we need to maybe step back to see things clearly. And that, I think, that's kind of what the journey of, the yoga system has been for me, is that I see here with my senses how much is true and not. Let me go back in, retreat back into my heart, and sit in that space, and really use discernment and my connection to higher power to see what's really going on. And often, what is it? Something like 90 something percent of what's going on isn't about me. I mean, and that is huge. I think that is one of the greatest things that's changed in me, because I certainly thought everything was about me,
Mm,
you know?
yeah.
And now I know there are forces that are at hand that I'm powerless over, but I can, I can only basically take care of my plot of land, build my little inner safe sanctuary in church.
Right. And that feels good though. You have a place to go.
Mhm.
And that feels safe to me. And I think the the spirituality piece too of letting go or moving from uncertainty to acceptance was really hard for me. It was hard for me to turn that over, life over, people over, circumstances over. I didn't understand it at first because I didn't understand that there is this higher power that's controlling it all. And it's a good thing. Sometimes it doesn't feel good, but at the end of the day or at the end of a process, I look back on things that didn't feel good at the time and I understand, okay, I get it now. I learned some things from that. The uncertainty and the letting go was hard because that felt, if I could control or thought I could control my environment and circumstances, it felt safe to me. And I really had to let that go, let that thinking go because it was an illusion and life is uncertain. And am I going to allow the ups and the downs and the sideways of life to really bat me around emotionally? I can't afford to do that because I want to stay sober today. And becoming emotionally unstable for any reason isn't going to help me in that purpose to be balanced and emotionally stable. And so I had to learn I can't control that situation. I can't control that person like you just shared. You looked at it from this compassionate lens and it took the focus off what you thought it meant to you personally and you made it about loving that other and understanding that other person. I did not know how to do that. I had a lens that was I need to control and I need to stay safe. And my higher power helped me to start looking through other lenses and trusting. And that came with time. When I would take my hands off something and just let it be, it always worked out. But when I got involved in it and got my little fingers all in the middle of it, it did not work out. It, it would end up a lot worse than I thought it would end up. And if I just realized that I don't have that kind of power to change someone else's behavior or circumstances, but I can pray for them and I can love them. And that's to me an action is to pray and to love and to send that to them and know that's a powerful thing. When you send someone that kind of love and care and compassion, I believe it reaches them at that spirit level. And that's what I've learned over time through, for me, drinking was a symptom. And I was able to get underneath and into the symptoms and the causes and conditions. And my higher power helped me to start connecting dots and realized this is an easier, softer way than my controlling and my lack of trust and the uncertainty of life and not wanting to live life on life's terms. That was the way it was for me when I was still drinking and a few years into sobriety, because those changes don't change overnight. It took a lifetime for me to get those installed in me. And I had to unlearn them. And the spirituality sort of underpinning or the underflow in my life today is so calming, and it's always there. It's always there. And it's most especially there in the present moment. And I can feel it. And then I can also feel it when I'm not in connection with it or with others. Because for me, the spirituality piece was learning how to connect in a safe way with other people. Because how can I connect with a higher power and not connect with his creation? And that helped with the trust issue. So it was just this beautiful way of sort of dovetailing off the trust in this being, whatever we choose to call it, from whatever religious perspective or spiritual perspective. That's the beauty of it. It can be completely 100% ours.
So I love that you said that you're focused on this, because I was thinking about how, how the newcomer, that walks in the room, oftentimes people have shared that it is just so overwhelming, the love that comes towards them. And so I'm just going to say that in the beginning, made that love sort of my, higher power, in the sense that it was like medicine. But I'll tell you what I would just suggest: let people know you, let people love you, may you find someone that you can trust and share who you are and be loved. And from there, the journey for the next step of believing in a higher power seems to just be the next, the
Yeah.
way to go, because there will be that time where you can't call anybody. And in that moment, you can reach out to your higher power and not reach out for the drink. And, when I first heard, the acceptance, quote, what reverberates from that quote, acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. What reverberates constantly in this quote, and I hear it over and over again: nothing, absolutely nothing happens in God's world by mistake. And there's something really freeing about that. I may not like it, but I have to believe that life is happening for me. And I like the last part of the quote, that I need to concentrate not so much on what happens in the world as on what needs to be changed in me and my attitudes. And what an amazing journey it is, finding a higher power, being of service. All of this has given me a purpose and an understanding as to why I'm still alive, Peg.
Right.
You know, we are miracles.
Yeah.
No, I mean, only alcohol, only people with addictions will really understand how close to death's door we really got. Okay. And now we've been given a gift. And one of my first mentors said, every day is a gift, like Christmas. Every day is Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And never forget it. And so I just really thank you for this, because I think that this is when my recovery jumped up a notch, when I really began to trust and have faith in something greater than me. And I think that's the journey. And it can be, I've heard people that were atheists, that say I'm an atheist, but they believe in principles, and they believe in the principle of love and unconditional love. So it's all semantics in a sense. It's all words. I've heard people say, my higher power is a tree. My higher power, this doesn't matter. As long as you know that your power, my little light, Heather's little light, isn't enough to manage the unmanageability of my life. I have to admit that every time I reach for this, whatever it might be, because it's certainly a frequency of addiction is alive and well in a lot of different areas. Whenever I reach for that, I have a choice to make my decision to turn my will over to a greater way of seeing things. Put it that way,
Beautiful. At the end of the day, it's about service and love.
Yeah.
And the ability to do both of those things. So thank you, my friend. Love you. And thank you for joining us on this episode of Recovery the Whole Enchilada. If you connected with our episode today, please share it, like it, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, because your feedback helps us to shape future conversations. And remember that we love you, And remember that your recovery story, with all its flavors and textures and complexities, matters deeply. And until next time, stay strong and keep growing. Love you.